Hey guys, welcome to That Florida Feeling. I hope you guys are having a good week. I hope everybody survived Adalia. I feel so bad for like Cedar Key and Horseshoe Beach and Steinhatchee and the Big Bend and I don't know, because it's such a small, it's not a small area, but like they have some really cool small villages in there, and I know some of them just got absolutely destroyed by that hurricane. So thoughts to them. I'm gonna try to find links to post. I haven't really seen any yet about how you can donate and help them. So as soon as I find them, they'll go up on the Instagram and Facebook page. But I really hope that everybody's okay. I saw that there wasn't any fatalities, so that's awesome. That's why you evacuate. So that's really good. I hope everybody else is doing good. Thank you for everybody who interacted with the Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and TikTok pages. Gosh, that's a lot of social media now. Keep checking out the YouTube page. It's a work in progress. I think I'm better at the shorts than the videos, and I'm just kind of posting shorts from around Florida and from about the past year. I just actually posted a really cool one that I liked, although, you know how you post something on social media and you're like, this is great, and nobody likes it? Yeah, that happened. It's okay. I showed off the Sugar Sand Festival in Clearwater from April, and I love that festival. I can't wait for it to come back because those are some talented people. But I had posted a short on YouTube, so check it out. Thanks to everybody who makes the podcast successful. Without you guys listening and interacting, we wouldn't be here. So thank you. And I'm glad that, like I said, a lot of people weren't really affected by the hurricane. So today is actually an interesting topic. It's a request. It was actually a request from a friend, Mallory. You can actually hear Mallory on my Newbie Floridian episode. It was about a year and a half ago. You can hear her talk about moving from Louisiana to Florida and all the changes and stuff she went through. So check that out. Give her some love. But she requested this, and I've seen this, and I've even seen the TikTok. There's a TikTok going around about a small town in Florida with a really interesting, wild past. I don't even know if I'd call it wild. We'll just say it's interesting. And somebody else had actually asked me about this before Mallory did. But Mallory's the one that requested this as an episode. So we're going to talk about Vernon, Florida. Now, if you've not heard of Vernon, Florida, I'm not surprised. If you have heard of Vernon, Florida, then either one, you've driven through it in the Panhandle, or two, you watch a lot of TikTok. It's one of the two. And as soon as I tell you what Vernon, Florida is known, you'll probably be like, I did see that TikTok. But let me tell you about Vernon first. Vernon, Florida is located in the northwest part of Florida. It's actually a city in Washington City, just north of Panama City, kind of a little bit east of Destin. It's not near the beach. It's not near I-10. It just kind of sits there. And it really is a small town. It only has about 700 people. So, it is a small town, blink and you'll miss it kind of thing. They don't even have a Publix. The town got its name after George Washington's home, Mount Vernon. So a little town named after a big fancy house is, kind of interesting. It's actually historic, though. Vernon is also a historic site. It's the site of a major Indian settlement before Florida was really settled. So when I talk about like the Miccosukee and the Seminoles and the Creeks, that was the area they were in, and this was some of their settlements. And Vernon was important at one time. It did hold the county seat for Washington County until Chipley took it in 1927. So it is an older town. The town was actually founded on the site of Holmes Creek in the 1880s, and it was founded because at one time, Holmes Creek was very important to northern Florida. The creek was actually used as part of a shipping route to Bonifay and other nearby towns. And the major export? Gopher tortoises. Yep, gopher tortoises. And gopher tortoises were actually in demand due to their high value of their shell at that time. By the way, the tortoise and the turtle do not have a shell. They are the shell. Just a side note, if you ever find a turtle that's injured, don't try to pull its shell off. You physically can't. The turtle is the shell. Sorry, that reminded me of that when I was writing this. But yeah, gopher tortoises were in high demand. Also, they had some farms there, and they also did, I've just lost the name of it, lumber. They did lumber. So the town had a little bit of economic value, and of course it was on the river, so it was a shipping port, basically. And, people would stop in, and that's how they got their mail, and that's how they got supplies, and that's how they kind of became a town and survived off that. But when the steamboats passed away and the railroad came through, and it did not come through Vernon, it kind of went around Vernon, the town took a little bit of a blow. The town has still survived, though, with time and tide, and it's continued to be a small town in the Florida Panhandle. But it's not a well-known small town. You can actually still access Holmes Creek that connects to Cypress Spree from that town. And they have a really cool setup there. They actually have a livery, which is where you can launch kayaks and canoes down into the creek to go down to the springs. The water's absolutely gorgeous, crystal clear. You could even be shuttled to dive spots to dive in the freshwater springs that are around the area of the small town. So really, this town is kind of surviving on a little bit of tourism now. They do a little bit of industry, but not much. But that's not why Vernon is well known. Vernon is known for another reason, and not a good reason, kind of almost a funny reason. And this is where TikTok comes in. Vernon is known as Nub City. That's right, Nub City. If you're like me, you're thinking of Rack City. I will not sing it for you. That is not why you tune into this podcast. But Nub City is Vernon's nickname, and it's got its name for a good reason. Of course, also all the wrong reasons. The town actually gained infamy for these wrong reasons in the late 1950s and early 1960s, as residents began to put out claims on lost limbs and other body parts. Now, I know that doesn't sound strange, but this town did it in strides. A lot of residents did it. This town actually became known for people missing their feet, arms, hands, even eyes. And this was a result of this only took place over 3 years. And in 3 years, they got Nub City out of this. So this is a 3-year trend of self-maiming for claims that started with $5,000 for a payout, and some even got up to $300,000. I mean, these claims made some people very, very famous and very, very rich. So yeah, the town kind of became known for insurance claims, and it really became the center for insurance claims that allowed residents to make money just by cutting off or shooting off or injuring themselves just to get claim money. And like I said, people were able to make a lot of money doing this. Some people even made millions. And the reason that Vernon really became Nub City is because this city made up 2/3 of the claims nationally. The entire U.S. that was filing claims, 2/3 of them came out of Vernon, Florida. And I mean, of course, the claims were coming from other parts of the Panhandle, because you got to think it's the 1950s. Country's in a little bit of a slump. There's not a lot of economy in the Panhandle. But Vernon was the epicenter for this. This 3-year maiming trend is what made Vernon famous. And of course, they even say that the town has an unofficial club called the Nub Club. What a name. But residents aren't exactly too happy to talk about it there. The Nub Club may or may not have been intentionally founded, either by choice or by accident, but either way, it made them semi-famous. I mean, maybe it really was an accident. Maybe there was a factory accident or a hunting accident or a drunk moment that turned out that they could make money off this. But either way, these people caught on. So you kind of have to wonder if the person that first did it by accident and then started making money, and then they told their friends, hey, I made $5,000 for accidentally shooting my hand off. And then people thought, I could go shoot my hand off and make money. Or, I mean, I just have a hard time believing this town was that clumsy. But, either way, people did it. So the 1950s and 60s, let me give you backstory on that, it wasn't like the country was back in a Great Depression time, but of course the economy was changing, especially in the Panhandle. The technology was taking off. People had come home from the wars. Some people may or may not have had jobs. And, with Vernon not being connected to a railroad and not really on a major highway, not a lot of industry was coming into this small town. So people really had to figure out a way to make money. And of course, the town used to be bustling with steamboats. I told you it was on the river or the creek, and that was plenty of economy. But by this time, most of it had gone from the area. They had just lost the sawmill, which was their main source of jobs. They didn't have a railroad. They really didn't have a highway. And so now people are just kind of like, well, we're farming and we're poor, but we still got to make money. So I guess the idea of trading a limb for a few $1,000s, which, by the way, was a lot back then, didn't sound too bad to some people. And apparently it didn't sound too bad to a lot of people in Vernon. By the 1960s, at least 50 of these residents had caught on to this and joined the Nub Club, as they say. And most of it claimed farming accidents, garage mishaps, hunting accidents, or whatever excuse they thought of. And some of these now might have been legitimate. You know, maybe they really were farming accidents, but the majority probably not. The idea of getting money from someplace as opposed to not having to work or not having any other prospects might be the story of what people did just to survive there. You know, we don't know. We can't judge too harshly. We're not in their shoes, but you do kind of have to question what was going. I mean, were you that desperate, or did you just want easy money? Either way, I don't plan on shooting my hand off just to make some money. I really don't. I don't know about y'all. So as this caught on in the town began to fill out insurance claims, and most people actually apparently preferred a shotgun blast as opposed to hacksawing off their limbs or digits. I guess it's faster. But it also gave insurance agents some really interesting stories. The agents in the region actually began to report outlandish and hilarious stories that eventually turned into a sad existence. An agent once reported that a list of claims from the Panhandle had included a man who maimed his foot while protecting his chickens, a man who was aiming for a hawk and shot off his hand, a trigger-happy farmer who mistook his foot for a squirrel, and one man who lost 2 limbs in a tractor accident that somehow involved a loaded rifle. Side note, apparently, and this is from claims, people like to lose limbs on opposite sides of their body so that they could use a crutch and a leg at the same time. I don't know. That's just apparently the preferred method. So as this accidents began to happen, people began to take out multiple insurance policies, and sometimes even just hours before the accidents actually took place. And insurance premiums began to climb due to the large amount of claims, but that didn't stop people. And some people, like I said, became millionaires because of these claims. The insurance companies found out that one man took out policies with 25 to 40 companies. That's a lot of insurance companies. I didn't even know that many existed that time. I don't know that many exist in this time. But anyways, this guy took out 25 to 40 policies with 25 to 40 different companies. So one company, one policy. And this man was a farmer. And apparently this man usually drove a stick shift pickup. And he would go out and he would do his things in his field. Well, on the day of the accident, he decided he was going to drive his wife's automatic transmission car. And somehow, he lost his left foot in an accident with this car. The man was also found with a tourniquet in his pocket at the time of the accident. Now, of course, the insurance companies at this point were like, really? So they tried to sue this guy for fraud. And in the courtroom, he was asked, why do you have tourniquets? Why would you even need to have a tourniquet if you're a farmer? And the guy said it was because of snakes. If he got a snake bite, he needed to tourniquet the area. I mean, that kind of actually makes sense. This man, though, had taken out so many insurance policies that it was well over his income as middle class. And he had so many policies that he managed to walk or hop away with over $1 million. And of course, when they did sue him for fraud, no jury would believe that a man purposely shot off his own foot. Sounds like maybe he did. Because if he was actually driving his stick shift truck, he would have needed both feet. He would have needed the right or the left for the clutch and the right for the pedals. But on this day, he decided to do his, automatic transmission, so he only needed one foot. So, of course, he shot off his left foot or lost his left foot in an accident and managed to get $1 million. Now, of course, insurance companies eventually got wise to the act and finally sent an investigator to snoop around. And, of course, this investigator kind of confirmed what people already knew. He reported back that while he was sitting on the street one evening, it was common to see anywhere from 8 to 12 people roaming the streets who were crippled, and by doing so, they gave the town a ghoulish, almost eerie atmosphere to see them limping along. I don't know, that sounds creepy. Insurance companies did finally, though, put an end to paying out their claims before everyone in Vernon could take off all their limbs. But that did not stop the town from getting its nickname, Nub City. Premiums in the region were so high, it took years for them to come down, and some insurance companies didn't even do business in the Panhandle for years. And I don't mean like a couple, I mean like 10 or more. Now, the town is a small town, so you'd expect them to be friendly. Apparently, they're not. This town is also the subject of a documentary that was originally supposed to be called Nub City. Filmmaker Errol Morris had heard about Vernon, Florida, and wanted to see what it was all about. He had heard of Nub City and all the insurance claims, and so he wanted to go and he wanted to make a film on Vernon called Nub City. So he wanted to talk to these people about the insurance claims and people taking their policies out and then basically blowing their limbs off for money. Well, he moved to Vernon to see what the town was all about, and when he started to go about making this documentary, he found out that a lot of people didn't want to talk about this. They didn't want to talk about how they had become infamous and their infamous nickname of Nub City. He actually found that they were hostile towards him, and he was even met with death threats. You know, the town didn't want to be happy, or was not happy to be subject of his documentary. He actually was beat up by an amputee's son after knocking on the wrong door. One of his crew was hit by a truck by an unhappy resident, and he even got beat up a couple more times. He did get some death threats, but he did get some good information. He did make his documentary, but he did not make his documentary on Nub City. He actually made a documentary about a small town in Florida, and just really about their cultural differences and how they were living in the Panhandle instead of making it about their infamous past. And the people who did talk said, you know, they would shoot off their left foot so they could drive their new car with their right foot. So he did get some information out of these people, but, you know, he saw the amputees around town, or the ones with the missing eyes, and, you know, he did get some good information, but he decided to make it about the small town he was living in as opposed to their infamous past. And this film was actually met with critical acclaim. Instead of making fun of the town or showing its interesting past, it really just showed life in a small town in the Florida Panhandle in the 1980s. And it's actually a really culturally great movie. It's culturally significant as it really shows how life is different in the Panhandle than the rest of Florida, or even in Alabama. The movie showcases people in the town who were happy to talk about their passions in life that included pets, hunting, and even the small town that they had loved and grown up in. And you can still see this documentary. It's on AMC or Tubi if you want to see about a small town with an infamous past. It is a very interesting documentary. It is, you know, it almost seems like he set out to make fun of these people, but he didn't. You know, he caught people who were proud to show off their trophies and their possessions and their pets. And one guy talking about his gopher tortoises. And, you know, so it's actually a really cool look into see how the Panhandle used to be. And what's really interesting, though, is there are some parts of the Panhandle that are still kind of that way. Take it from someone who's lived there. The Florida Panhandle almost seems untouched by time in some parts of it. And it's a really interesting place. And I'll be honest, when I started to research about this town and I'd seen the TikTok and, you know, I really wasn't sure. This is a small town in the Panhandle. I've heard of it. I've been near it. But it has survived through changing times, and it still exists to this day. Now, did they do something that most people wouldn't normally do? Yes, but they still survived. The people seem just like anyone else. You can actually still see amputees in the town today. They are the dying generation, but they are still there. I don't know that I would be brave enough to walk up in the town and ask them about their past, but I do think it would be a small town at least worth driving through during a road trip. I mean, it is kind of out of the way, but if you're driving 10 down to Panama City, you know, pass through Vernon, see what it's all about, see that tiny town that has a really cool place to launch canoes and go down Holmes Creek into a cypress spring. Or check out a small town that doesn't even have a Publix. You know, pay attention, though. It's kind of a blink and you'll miss it kind of place, but I do think it would be at least worth driving through. So, is Vernon still a town in Florida? Absolutely. Is it the home of infamous Nub City? Yes. Is it right to have that nickname? I think so. I think that TikTok did it some justice, and after researching it, I kind of see both sides of it. If you're struggling to survive, you got to do what you got to do. But also, maybe just move. Maybe go somewhere else. It's okay. But I know some people don't have those means, so all I can say is that's a town who did what it did to survive. Thanks for listening. I hope you found out a bit of Florida history that's very interesting, thanks to TikTok bringing it to light. We're not going to talk about Florida Man this week because I feel like we might have just talked about a lot of Florida men or the possible birthplace of Florida Man. Got to be in a different mindset to do that. Don't forget to check out the social media sites. If you have a second, I really would appreciate a review on Apple and Spotify. It just kind of helps get the podcast out to other people. All right, guys, there's still a bunch of things going on in the Atlantic. I don't think anything's supposed to come near us. I hope nothing comes near any of us. Have a great week. Drink your water. It's still hot out there. And as always, guys, that's your daily dose of sunshine.
This podcast is a production of Unfiltered Studios. If you would like to know more about joining Unfiltered Studios, please visit our website at unfpod.com for more information.